Good morning. We are going to start now with the second Sicha for Parshas Yisro in Likkutei Zayin in volume 16 of Likkutei Sichos. This Sicha is, again, we started learning Sichos in Yiddish, and we'll read through it. I'll translate and offer commentary as we go along. In Heintige Seder, in this week's Torah portion, Werd der Zelt, we read about as when Yisro hat gesehen, wie Moshe Rabbeinu sitzt, lishpoit es ha'am in ha'beika da'arav. Yisro noticed how his son-in-law, Moshe Rabbeinu, sat down and began judging and teaching the Jewish people from morning till evening. Hat zum geteinent. He had a problem with that. Madu ata yoshev levadcha v'chol ha'am nitzav alecha min ha'beika da'arav. Why are you sitting alone with everybody approaching you, coming to talk to you from morning till evening? Novoil tivoil gam ato gam ha'am gomer. You will become worn out, and the nation that you're judging and teaching will become worn out very quickly. And then Yisro went on to offer advice to Moshe Rabbeinu. You shall see to it, gomer, as Moshe zal oiskleib and sorry alafim. Moshe should select leaders of groups of thousands of people, and so on. Their job will be to judge and teach the Jewish people at all times. Only the real serious, important matters will be brought to you, to Moshe Rabbeinu. By following such a pattern of behavior, you will be able to survive along with the entire nation. Everybody will be able to function properly, and everything will work out peacefully. That's the story in this week's parasha. Is Yadua Ditmiya in them? A famous question about this is, Vi kumtes, how is it possible as Moshe Rabbeinu, Raya mehem nashal Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu, who was a faithful shepherd and leader of the Jewish people, hat allein nit choishish gewen, as ein Eufen Anhage can differ into novel Tibo Gemerha. As a faithful shepherd of the Jewish people, how is it possible that Moshe Rabbeinu did not realize this on his own, did not notice, did not realize that his behavior can lead to him being worn out and the Jews being worn out and so on? Und es ist nicht eingefallen, die Eitzah, he did not think on his own, did not come up with this simple solution on his own, to hire judges who would assist him in judging the people. He needed Yisro, who was a priest of Midian. He was only there for a very short time. Yisro, who came for a very short while, was not originally a Jewish person. He converted. He was originally a priest for the idols, an idolatrous priest in Midian. And he didn't stay with the Jewish people for a long time. He was there for a short while. Why was it left up to him to come up with a solution and implement it? There's a phrase that's often used, a visitor for a short time sees for a mile, or sees in the distant future. And sometimes someone who's local, someone who's been around for a while, for a long time, misses even the most obvious things. So Yisro could perhaps be considered the guest over here to the future, and perhaps has a more broader outlook of things. And Moshe missed, can we say that Moshe missed even the most obvious solution to this complex issue? God forbid to apply this reasoning to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe was selected by God himself, God alone, to be the leader of the Jewish people from the moment that Moshe was born. Not only was he selected, but he was already functioning as the leader of the Jewish people for quite some time. God forbid to say that Moshe couldn't think of this on his own and needed Yisro to bring it to his attention. Is der von Gufa verstandig? Now, since Moshe depended on Yisro, that teaches us, as by Moshe is ausgekommen, that Moshe surmised, and from Moshe's perspective, it was indeed so, not only an assumption, but also truth, as allein ken, allein darf, that he himself is able to, and must, sich vernehmen mit mishpatin dem Am, he must be involved in every detail of judging the people, sai davar hagadol, both important, great matters, and sai davar hakatan, as well as small, seemingly trivial and insignificant matters. It has to be him. That's how he understood it from his perspective. That's how Moshe understood it. Und von deswegen wird das nicht schaden. It would not affect him in any way. Nicht ihm und nicht Bnei Yisrael. It wouldn't harm him, nor would it harm the people of Israel. From his perspective, doing things the way he had originally set out to do would not have affected him. He could have continued judging the people, and everything would have worked out peacefully. That would have been Moshe's perspective. That was Moshe's perspective. Of them. Additional proof that this was indeed Moshe's true, authentic perspective. As Moshe's hanhaga that Moshe's behavior, Moshe's conduct in judging the people from morning to night himself, proof that this is a true and authentic method according to Torah. The novelty, it will also not lead to being worn out. Our sages teach us that the name Yeser, or the Yisro's name was given to him. As we know, he had 7 names. One of his names was Yeser, and then it was changed to Yisro. The reason he was called by this name, the reason why he was given this name is Al Shem Sheyiter Parsha Achas B'Torah V'Ata Techze. There was a section in the Torah that was added in his merit. This section of V'Ata Techze, the section of Yisro's advice to Moshe Rabbeinu to create a hierarchy of judges, was added in the Torah because of Yisro. Because the name Yisro implies addition or being added to. That's how he got the name Yisro, because he added to the Torah, or there was a section added to the Torah because of him. And because of the unique language used over here by our sages, that a section of Torah was added because of him, not as the Parsha Nemra or the sages do not say that a section of Torah was said or written because of him. This is a style that's used with regard to other sections of Torah. But over here, the Torah doesn't use that language. Instead, the Torah says that he added a section in Torah. Is verstandig. This proves as nicht nur is durch Yisro is gala geworden die Parsha von V'Ata Techze. Not only was this section revealed through Yisro, nor noch mehr. Also, Yisro had aufgetan Kvayochala Yisro v'Yisafa in Torah. Yisro added a section in Torah. Something that was not there previously was now added to Torah by Yisro. Durch ihm ist zugekommen die Parsha von V'Ata Techze. This section of the Torah, V'Ata Techze, where the judges are hired, was appended to the Torah through Yisro. But in Torah, Torah, the way it was before Yisro made this addition, did not have this section. Mela is moving. From this we understand, as Eider Yisro Tuketan, as in Torah, Parsha, before Yisro achieved that this section should be added to Torah, is mitzat Torah's emes gufe nit given the Seder and Hagav from V'Ata Techze. From Torah's perspective, this whole section describing the hiring of the judges did not exist. No, as Moshe Allein darf mishpatim am b'chol davar, rather than Moshe Rabbeinu should be the one who judges and teaches the Jews along the way, every step of the way himself. And thus is their time as Moshe Rabbeinu, and that's why Moshe was calling Yonei Torah. Moshe represented Torah. All he embodied Torah. He was all about Torah. So because based on Torah, the way it was before Yisro's suggestion, it was a valid approach that only Moshe should be the one judging everyone. And that's why Moshe behaved that way. That was the path that he followed. So if Torah itself was fine without this hierarchy of judges, conversely, we were faced with another issue, another complication. Since, as we've just established, that Moshe himself could have judged the people alone, and everything would have worked out just fine. So why now suddenly are we concerned with Yisro's problem? As Anhagas Moshe can defer into novel tibble that the way Moshe is doing things would lead to him and the nation being worn out. And things will become very difficult for you. If, according to Torah and according to Moshe's perspective, he could have continued doing things exactly as he was doing it up until that point, why did the Torah suddenly accept Yisro's perspective that Moshe needed help and needed assistance? Before we answer this question, we will preface with a similar incident that happened before the Torah was given, or right as the Torah was being given to the Jews. This claim that Yisro made, which occurred after the second set of tablets were delivered to the Jews from Yom Kippurim, they were brought on Yom Kippur, after the Torah was given on Mount Sinai and Shavuos, and then Moshe was on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights, and he came down with the first set of tablets. He broke them after he saw the golden calf. This is 40 days of atonement, and that was followed by another set of 40 days, after which Moshe returned with the second set of tablets on Yom Kippur. So now, morning after Yom Kippur, Moshe sits down and begins teaching and judging the people and answering everybody's questions. That's when Yisro came up with his idea, with his suggestion. As Moshe Rabbeinu hat abgeschätzt sich und die Iden nicht wie das kommt aus mit Zad Yisro. In Moshe's estimation, the way he understood his capabilities and the way he understood the Jewish people was not in the same way that Yisro viewed it, as we just explained. As they kennen und davon gemischt mit dem werden von ihm allein und lernen von ihm allein, nor Chukei Alakim es Terasiv es Mishpativ von Davar Agadol. And yes, Moshe himself is the one that teaches and judges and answers all the questions of all issues, all areas of Torah, from the greatest thing to the smallest thing. So this scenario did play itself out somewhat earlier. Is ähnlich zu dem, was man gefindt früher. A similar situation we see earlier. Right after the 10 Commandments were given to the Jewish people, the Luchas Rishonos, right before the first set of tablets were brought, is Sichos zu dem, was ihnen haben geteinet, als können nicht aushalten, Herren, noch Kol Hashem Elokeinu oid. As Hashem was telling the Jewish people the 10 Commandments, the Jews complained to Moshe that they can't hear God's voice. Und haben gebeten bei Moshe, at tedaber aleinu. They requested that Moshe be the one to talk to them. He should be the intermediary. He should hear the 10 Commandments and the rest of the Torah from Hashem directly, and then he would transmit it, he would teach it to them. So when the Jewish people came to Moshe and said that they don't want to hear Hashem's voice directly, they want to hear the Torah from him, as Moshe getainet, Rashi's mefarish, Moshe had a problem with that as well. As Rashi explains, as ve'at, the word used in that pasuk when the Jews talked to Moshe and asked that he be the one to teach them Torah, they use the term ve'at. Ve'at is feminine for you. Ve'at lashon nekeva meant, and Rashi explains that it means hitashtem es koichi kinekeva. You've weakened me like a female. Shenitzta'arti aleichem. I am pained by you. Refisem es yadi. You've weakened my hand. Why? You should have preferred to learn Torah directly from God, directly from Hashem, and not from me. So it's a similar situation where Moshe believes that the Jewish people are capable of hearing Torah directly from God, and the Jews say we want to hear it from you and not directly from Hashem. Das heißt, Leute wie Moshe abgeschätzt in the way Moshe estimated the Jewish people's capability, haben sie gedacht wollen und sie seien gewesen wie Cheles zu lernen Torah und Pia Gvura. They should have wanted and they would have been able to hear Torah directly from Hashem. Aber der Eibishter hat angenommen die Teine von Eden. But Hashem accepted the Jewish people's request. Heitivu kol asher deberu. The Torah says that God said the Jewish people spoke well. Al derech vida, similar to what we read over here. Der Eibishter hat Masken given to Atas Yisrael, that Hashem agreed to Yisrael's suggestion, because this is geworden a parsha in Torah, part of Torah. So we have a similar situation where the Jews wanted it one way, Moshe believed that it should be done otherwise, and Hashem agreed with the way the Jews requested. That is also somewhat difficult to understand. The chiluk zwischen der Madrege of Eden Moshe hat Meshara given, the way Moshe estimated that the Jewish people's level was, as they can learn in Torah and Piyagvura, that they should be able to learn Torah directly from Hashem. When Darge from their matzav apel, but the way it actually, their level actually was, practically speaking, as they darfan learn that they have to learn Torah from Moshe as an intermediary, is there seems to be complete opposites. The verstandig von dem, as we see, was the idea wegen their matzav, but by Moshe it caused an extreme weakness and a disappointment to Moshe. He was very troubled and disappointed by the Jewish people's inability to hear Torah directly from God. An extreme opposite, it would seem, from the way he estimated that they should be able to hear Torah from Hashem directly. So we have a similar question that we asked earlier. How is it possible, as Moshe Rabbeinu, the leader and the sustainer of all of Israel, seemingly did not estimate and did not understand the Jewish people's capability properly? So much so to the extent, as a leader of this flock, he miscalculated and misestimated their abilities. So the Rebbe now begins by answering, saying that there is an explanation that we could apply to both of these situations. Es ist nicht der Pshat, as Moshe Rabbeinu hat chas v'shalom sich teuer gewinn in Abschatz in the Matze von. God forbid to say that Moshe made a mistake in his calculation and in the way he estimated the capabilities of the Jewish people. Nor the kavana is in them. Rather, as follows: B'shas Moshe Rabbeinu cooked afidin. When Moshe Rabbeinu views the Jewish people, they are indeed truly on a higher level. As they can they are on a level high enough that they really could receive Torah from Hashem directly. Because Moshe lifts them, raises them to his level. So therefore, because he was able to learn Torah from Hashem directly, he affects that the Jews could also learn Torah directly from Hashem. Because they're with him, he raises them to his level, and now just like he can hear Torah directly from Hashem, so too everybody else can. But the Jews were not sure about that, and they said, thus was they can learn in Torah and Piyagvura. The fact that they're able to hear the Torah directly from Hashem is doch der Far, was Moshe hebt sie auf zu dieser Darge. It's because Moshe raises them to that level. When the Rebbe is there, they therefore had a request. They will nemen Torah mit zere kliyasaga. They want to receive Torah, hear Torah, and understand Torah based on their own capabilities. Mit die eigene Keuches in the Maimed Matzav, wie sie seine mit Adatzman. They didn't want to be elevated to Moshe's level. They wanted to hear Torah in their own lives, from their own perspective, with their own capabilities. One of them had the Eibishter gesagt, and that's what Hashem responded to by saying, "Heitivu kol asher diberu." They spoke very well. Weil in dem Öfen wird die Torah bei seine Skabel und niklat werden in seine Primis. Only through receiving Torah on their own level will Torah then become absorbed and received by them in the most internal manner. If they were to hear Torah on Moshe's level, which means hearing it directly from Hashem, that's wonderful, it's great, but that would not have an effect on them, because as soon as they depart from Moshe's level, they don't have anything anymore. In order for them to be able to process Torah and apply Torah to their lives, they have to hear and receive Torah the way it is on their own level. Damit wird werden verstanden, the diuk halosh, and this will also explain wording. Hitashtem es koichi kinekeva. You've weakened me like a female. Was weiß nicht nur auf Hergisch Zar. This is not only an expression of pain, of nitzta'arti alechem, that you've pained me or you've disappointed me, nor is biker madgish den inyan fun chalishus. This highlights that there was a weakening, or the fisem es yadi, as Rashi says, you've made my hands weak. Why would we say that Moshe was the one that became weak? The Asbara is explanation. Moshe Rabbeinu zal learn Torah mit Eden kefiret zaynam, in order for Moshe Rabbeinu to teach the Jewish people Torah the way they requested. That you, Moshe, should be the one to talk to us. He had to lower himself down from his level. Moshe was on a much greater, higher level, and in order for him to teach Torah to the Jewish people the way they wanted to receive Torah, he could not remain on his level. He had to come down a couple of notches. If Moshe would remain, Moshe, the revelation of Torah that he teaches to the Jewish people, the revelation of Torah that he teaches to Jewish people would be Torah that he knows, and from his perspective, as he darf learn nicht many from Moshe or from, because then the only way they can hear Torah, the only way the Jewish people can learn and study Torah is if they is directly from Hashem and not from Moshe. So in order for him to be able to teach them the way they wanted and not directly from Hashem, he had to lower himself, he had to bring himself down. So therefore Moshe's strength had to be weakened, and he had to have he had to refer to himself as a female. This was a steep decline in Moshe's own level. But as a result, he was able to serve as an intermediary between Hashem and the Jewish people. And now comes a time after the Torah was given and after the Jews heard everything from Moshe. Now he has to teach them the details of Torah. After Moshe already received the entire Torah with all its details on Mount Sinai from Hashem. And after the second set of tablets were given to the Jews on Yom Kippur. So now he assumed he assumed that everything has to be taught to the Jewish people by him directly. He needs to be the one teaching everything to the Jewish people. Since Moshe was the one that heard Torah directly from Hashem, nobody but him, nobody other than him can transmit Torah to the Jewish people in its entirety, in its fullest and strongest measure. More so. Because Moshe is the one that serves as the intermediary between God and the Jewish people to teach them the word of Hashem. God spoke directly from Moshe's mouth. That means that when the Jews hear Torah from Moshe, it's as if they're hearing it directly from Hashem. Das ist der Diuk Halosh in der Antwort von Moshe after Taina von Yisrael. That's why the language that Moshe used when he answered Yisrael, why he himself is the one sitting all day and judging everyone. People are coming to me to hear what Hashem says. They want to hear Torah directly from Hashem. Das heißt, as das was a learning from Moshe is Talmud Pi Gvura. That means that when they hear the Torah from Moshe, it's as if they're hearing it directly from Hashem. That was his answer to Yisrael. Now, when they hear Torah from me, I am repeating to them exactly word for word what I heard from Hashem. Additionally, as Moshe hoped of Eden, because Moshe lifts and raises the Jews to him from Hashem. To use a vernacular often expressed in Chassidus, Moshe's darge is re'iyah. Moshe was on a level of seeing. He had a vision, he had a visual to all areas of godliness and holiness. So when he received Torah from Hashem, he saw it, he visualized it. It was real, it was actual. So in addition to that, in addition to the fact, was man kennt zugleichen dem Übernehmen einer Sache von einem, was allein gesehen, eine Sache, was man nimmt von einem, was das bloß gehört. When you hear something from someone who saw it, when you receive and you're taught by someone who saw it, is much greater than hearing it from someone who heard it. Seeing something is real, hearing something secondhand is not as real. So when the Yidden were going to hear Torah from Moshe, it was as if they were hearing Torah directly from Hashem, because Moshe saw it, and what he was transmitting to them wasn't just something that he had heard, it was something that he had seen. As the Gemara says, seeing is incomparably greater than hearing. At Moshe Poel given, Moshe affected durch Ufay Beniden, he actually raised the Yidden as euch Zeir von Kabbalah from Moshe, by them receiving Torah, even though it was coming from Moshe, the Zion in a darga from Re'iyah should also be as if they are seeing it and receiving it in the same level as he did. On the high time, and for this reason, was Eden nemen the Ashbaz Torah from Moshe and even from Re'iyah. When Jews received the Torah from Moshe in the same level that he did, through seeing it, through visualization, Ken und darf nor Moshe allein lernen Torah mit Eden. Who can teach Torah to Yidden on this level? It can only be Moshe. It has to be Moshe. So to the extent that even in the most minor details of all their daily judgments need to occur and happen through Moshe himself. And he'll manage. Even the people will be fine. Everything will work itself out peacefully. That was Moshe's perspective. Again, he wanted to raise the people to be on his level so that they could receive Torah in the exact same manner that he received Torah from Hashem. Das is the Rufte von Yisro. Now, what did Yisro accomplish? Yisro is a kumen me'arte. Yisro arrived from his land, and he's given a ger, he was a convert. He saw the Jewish people on their level. Nicht in a matze wie Moshe hebt sie auf zu sein darge, nor wie sie stehen. He didn't see the Jewish people the way they were when Moshe raised them to his level. He saw them the way they were today, the way they were acting, the way they were living their daily lives, without any assistance from Moshe, the way they were on their own. That's why he said, der Inyan von Mishpat in Eden can nicht sein durch Moshe allein. That's where he realized and told Moshe that any judging of the Eden, any teaching of the Jewish people cannot happen through Moshe alone. He needs help. When it comes to teaching the actual Torah, the words of Torah, when Jews come to learn the laws, the satiras and the teachings, so how to behave and how to act, then Yisro says it makes sense to say as das Gofa Pelt und Demol werden in Aufgaben zu Dages Moshe, that when they're learning that, they can be lifted, they can be raised up to Moshe's level. We'll learn in B'dargase and even learn Torah from his perspective. That's why you, Moshe, can teach them the laws. That's when they're teaching the actual text of the Torah and what exactly word for word the commandments that Hashem taught them. However, now we're coming to a point where the Jewish people have questions. They want to apply Torah to their daily lives, and they have questions with regards to their daily activities. When there's a dispute and they need to know what Torah says about a certain matter, in a very mundane matter, at that point they are very clearly not on Moshe's level anymore. Therefore, they cannot receive Torah, they cannot be lifted at that point and try to receive Torah on Moshe's level. They have to receive Torah on their level. When they're learning Torah originally, that's fine, they can be on Moshe's level. But when it comes to applying Torah to their daily lives, they need to receive Torah through someone else other than Moshe. Their matzav is aber. However, as when the Baal didn't stay for Moshe Rabbeinu, when there's a dispute and the parties come to Moshe, that actually did raise them up. So although the way they are in their own lives, they were not on the level of Moshe and they could not necessarily receive Torah on Moshe's level, but once they came to Moshe, once they approached Moshe and they said, we want to hear the answer to our dispute from you, Moshe, now they did raise themselves up to Moshe's level. Even a child learning Torah now for the first time will understand, as when it is in the Zalmanov when he's in the same room as his teacher, he behaves differently. He's on a different level than when he's doing his own things. When a child plays, he's obviously not learning, so he's not focused in the same way as he is when he's in the same room learning Torah from his teacher. So obviously, there's a difference. Even these people who are functioning in their daily lives, even the Jewish people living their daily lives, when they come to Moshe with their disputes, they were suddenly elevated to his level. They were able to receive Torah even in their own daily affairs from Moshe's level. If so, why was Yisro's suggestion accepted? If people could still be elevated to Moshe's level. Nevertheless, Hashem still agreed and accepted Yisro's suggestion. Why? Weil man darf bewahren euch der Matze von Eden, wie sie wollen sein, nachdem, wie sie wollen reingehen in Eretz Yisrael. We need to prepare for a time for when the Jews will eventually arrive in the land of Israel. When you, Moshe, will be lying with your ancestors after Moshe passes away, and the people will behave differently. Now that'll be a time when they're no longer learning Torah directly from Moshe. When they're hoping durch him and be elevated to his level, Zol Torah, was is ständig dvar Hashem, Torah, which will always remain the word of God, euch demot ankommen zu sei, should reach them then as well, durch die Rosh Alpha Yisrael, from them there, through the leaders of the Jewish people of that generation. So while Moshe is around, even in the people's daily affairs, they could be elevated to Moshe's level. Once Moshe is no longer physically around, and there are other leaders of the Jewish people, at that point, the Jews still need to learn Torah. Das ist echt der Tamper, was Moshe nicht gehalten, als allein darf das tun. That's why Moshe, who knew that there will come a time when he might not be around, but he felt that he doesn't have to be the one to set up the system. As der Inyan. In addition to the fact that a leader of this generation should prepare things for the way things are after he passes away is not common. Not only is it uncommon, but at that point Moshe really didn't think that would ever happen. If not for the sin that occurred afterwards, either the sin of the spies or the sin of Moshe hitting the rock instead of talking to the rock, if not for a sin that followed, Moshe would have been the one leading the Jews into the Holy Land, into the land of Israel, and it would have been the permanent redemption. There would have not been any exile that follows. And at that point, the Jews would have continued learning Torah on Moshe's level with pure visualization. So that's why Moshe felt that there's no point in preparing for a time when he's no longer around. Because that case, at that point, that was never going to be the case. Nevertheless, this still needs to be forewarned and prepared for through Moshe. Because everything in Torah, even the things that are relevant only to later generations, Moshe must be first achieved through Moshe. As our sages say, anything that even a Torah scholar in a future generation will innovate in Torah, all has its source, is rooted in Moshe's teaching at Mount Sinai. Das heißt, this means, even something that a scholar, a Torah scholar, in a future generation, innovates. It's his own innovation. That too was given to Moshe at Mount Sinai. Because this scholar came up with this innovation through his own efforts, with his own mind, in his own study, the only way this innovation can be included in Torah, it has to go through Moshe. And that makes this innovation to be part of Torah, and it's as if it's the word of Hashem. Das ist, was Yisro hat gesagt zu Moshe Rabbeinu. That's why Yisro tells Moshe Rabbeinu, "V'ata techeze," you will see. Beruach HaKodesh Alech. As Rashi explains, what does Yisro mean that Moshe will see? Through his divine inspiration, through his Ruach HaKodesh. Moshe darf auskleiben und einstellen mit sein Ruach HaKodesh. Moshe needs to be the one to institute and to install, using his divine inspiration, the Sarei Alafim, the leaders, the other leaders. Was wollen Shofet sein dem Am, who will then function as judges, und durch them wird bewahren l'chol haderes. And that becomes a preparation for all future generations. As das was Chachmei Yisrael, the way the leaders, the sages of the Jewish people, smuchin ish mipi ish ad Moshe Rabbeinu. Every leader, every teacher, every rabbi of every future generation received his smicha, his ordination, from a rabbi who received his ordination, from a rabbi who received his ordination, going all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu. Everybody received the Torah in this same chain, all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu. That enables them to rule in Torah using their own logic, all because it's the mishpat from Torah's emes, Torah's Moshe, based on the laws, the way they are ascribed in the Torah of truth, the Torah of Moshe, because Moshe was the one who set up this hierarchy. Had he not set up this hierarchy, then nobody today would be able to study Torah with their own logic and come up with any innovations. We'd be reading the same texts and the same words over and over without anything new. But through Moshe being the one that established this hierarchy and this system where people can approach other people other than Moshe, that enables us to study Torah with our teachers and with our Rebbes and with our Rosh Yeshivas now, using our own understanding and our own innovation. This will also explain the interesting use of terminology in this pasuk. You shall see, but the word techeze means see in Aramaic. Nit v'ata tire. V'ata tire is Hebrew, and v'ata techeze is Aramaic. Torah is generally written in Lashon Kodesh, in Hebrew. Seldom do we have words in the Torah that are in Aramaic, and when there is, there's a reason for it. Now we've established that Moshe needs to use his divine inspiration to teach the Jews. But had he done so with re'iyah, with actual visualization, using the Hebrew word, dargas Moshe b'milo u'v'takva, Moshe's perspective, without any filtrations, without any obstacles, then you don't need to have any other teachers, any other leaders. Everything is taught to Moshe or through Moshe in a revealed manner. And he judges everybody. He judges everyone, the entire nation, in all of their matters, both important and significant matters, as well as small and insignificant matters. Everything is taught by Moshe. If he's teaching Torah on his level, then there's no need for anyone else. Through this decline in Moshe's level. Similar to what we said earlier, that Moshe's strength was weakened when the Jews wanted to hear Torah from him and not from Hashem. Instead of him seeing Torah the way it is in Hebrew, rather it was techze in Aramaic, but that's the targum for re'iyah, which is the translation of re'iyah, of visualization in Hebrew. Das heißt, as an inyan for re'iyah, Dargas Moshe's perspective now, that abgeteicht is translated, unimshach, and therefore can be applied in Targum Lashon, in the language used to translate the Torah, Lashon Arami from the Welt, a worldly language. And again, to use the terminology often used in Chassidus, it's not a perfect visualization, it comes from the hindsight, from the back. So now Moshe can lower himself down from his ideal level, and now he sees the way the Jews are from their own level, from their perspective. And now Moshe realizes that indeed we must install a hierarchy of judges. And that's why this entire Torah portion is named Yisrei. Al Shem Sheyitir Parsha Achas B'Torah, because a section in Torah was added because of him. Al Mitzadargas Moshe is an understatement. From Moshe's perspective, things should have been differently. Unachmer, more so in Torah Atzma, from Torah's perspective alone itself, Gilu Chachmasa Yisbarach, God's wisdom must be revealed, was wird nisgala durch Moshe, through Moshe, in an understatement. The revelation of God's wisdom through Moshe happens in a completely different order. Yisrei at Aber Ufketon, Yisrei in Torah. Yisrei now added and came up with an amazing innovation in Torah. As Eichter said from Vata Techze, that even teaching and learning Torah on this lower level of Vata Techze in Aramaic, Vert Aseder and Hagal Pi Torah becomes a valid method of learning Torah. Valid even according to Torah itself. So Moshe wanted to teach Torah on his level. And Yisrei says that while that might work now while you're around, it's not going to work when you're no longer around. So therefore, you, Moshe, need to come down, need to lower yourself down to the level of the people, teach them Torah in the minute details and in the very mundane affairs of their lives, and only then can they truly receive Torah. And the catch is that it has to be done by Moshe himself. It can't be done by anybody else. Moshe needs to be the one to institute this level. We couldn't wait till after Moshe passes away and then institute this hierarchy. It had to be set in place while Moshe was still alive, because that makes it part of Torah. That makes it a valid and a legitimate method of studying Torah. However, this seemingly implies, as the inyan from Vata Techze is blaze an inyan from Yerida Chas Shalom. This seems to be a decline, God forbid. Kedei zu bewahren in Eden, wird davon ankommen zu einem Mutze zwischen sie und Moshe, so that later on the Jewish people can be prepared and have this intermediary between Moshe and them. Just like earlier, the Jews needed Moshe to serve as an intermediary between them and Hashem. So why is that ideal? It seems to be a decline, a drop, a descent from the ideal situation. However, when we look at things slightly deeper, go beyond the surface, we learn that the opposite is true. Through preparing and raising a Jew who may find himself on a lower level, we actually accomplish much greater things. So through reaching out to somebody who is on a much lower level, we actually draw down from a much higher level of holiness and spirituality. The way the Frierdiker Rebbe, similar to the way the Frierdiker Rebbe describes and elaborates in the Mamorim that were written for his own yahrzeit, Basi Lagani, specifically chapter 11 in Basi Lagani, which is the chapter we learned this year. As dafke zu lib dem avodah lamata, because the ultimate goal of everything is the service of God in this world. This service of God in our lowly world requires a constant battle with the body and with the animal soul and with the evil inclination. God squanders even the most valuable treasures. Before the war, not only were they not spent, but they were never even shown to anyone. They were hidden, they were concealed. And suddenly, for this war, they are not only taken out and spent, but they are squandered. And this squandering of these treasures is as an onkumen, is so that they should reach nor to the Likkutei Achayil, not the commanders of the army, nor to the Anshe Achayil, the lowest of the lowest ranking soldiers. They should be the ones that receive these treasures that are being spent and squandered by Hagat. They're the ones that are actually carrying out the war. So that is the reason that it's not considered. That's why it's not considered a descent, because the lower you go, the greater your holy, your spiritual inspiration will be. The lower you go, the greater the treasures you receive from Hashem are. All that said, it's still considered a work in progress, because right now we're working with a physical, mundane world. Through working in this world and receiving all these concealed treasures that enable us and push us to do what Hashem wants in this world, there is no lower world than the world we find ourselves in now. That will lead us to the ultimate purpose of everything. But thus with Zayin, B'Shleimus, that will be perfected and revealed, B'Vias Mashiach Tzidkenu, with the coming of Mashiach, B'Karev Mamish, may it be speedily in our days.